Well, the media's Kamala Love Fest is in full swing, but not so fast. CNN, of all networks, just threw a lot of ice water on the inauguration plans for Kamala Harris. We'll give you all the polling details coming up in just a second. Plus, Christopher Wray, the FBI director, answering questions right now on Capitol Hill about the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. New revelations, and we'll deliver those to you coming up. And a devastating new ad against Kamala Harris that will be replicated by every Senate candidate and every House candidate running for the Republicans. She is poison on the ticket. It tells you just how bad Joe Biden really was, the fact that they're settling on this person as their nominee. It's not good to be a Democrat today, and we're going to tell you why coming up right now. My name is Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry. Thanks for watching us on our live stream across all of Town Hall Media's social media platforms. That includes Rumble and YouTube and X and Facebook. We appreciate your support. And if you're watching us after the fact, please like and share and subscribe this video. That means a ton to us. It's how we're able to continue doing what we're doing and cut through the social media big tech noise out there and elevate our programming so that people can get it that much easier. And if you're watching us across the Town Hall Media websites, thank you for that. I'm talking about Town Hall, Hot Air, Red State, PJ Media, Twitchy, and Bearing Arms. Please take a look at our VIP memberships. You can get an ad-free experience and exclusive content only for VIP members. Thanks for that. So earlier today on CNN, they took a look at some hard polling data. And when I say hard, I mean like rock hard, like hitting your head on concrete. If you're a Kamala Harris fan, if you're a Democrat, if you think you've got the answer now to all of the electoral woes that you've been feeling for the last several months, knowing that Donald Trump is on a path to victory, well, you're not happy right now if you think Kamala Harris was the solution. Take a look at these devastating numbers.
CNN senior data reporter Harry Enton joining me now to run the numbers. There is a lot of excitement. We have not seen this kind of shift in tone from the Democrats in particular. I can't remember a time where we've been through something like this.
This has been the craziest month in American politics that I can possibly recall. It was less than a month ago that Joe Biden and Donald Trump were debating in the CNN debate.
Less than a month.
Less than a month. We had a failed assassination attempt. We had a president literally saying, no, I'm not going to run for re-election less than a month before the Democratic National Convention. But here is the thing, Sarah Seidner, for all of the excitement that Democrats have over Kamala Harris, it is going to be difficult to beat Donald Trump. And I want to give you an understanding of why. Let's take a look here just first at the favorable views of Donald Trump. We know that Donald Trump has historically been unpopular. But take a look now. After the Republican National Convention, in the ABC News Ipsos poll, he recorded his highest ever favorable rating at 40%. That's not a one-off. Take a look at the Quinnipiac University poll, 46%. That's the highest ever in that pollster. The fact is, Donald Trump is more popular now than he ever has been before. So yes, Democrats can make this switcheroo, but they're still going to have to beat Donald Trump, a Donald Trump who is stronger, Sarah, than he has ever been before.
It will be interesting to see how voters respond to all of this. Now, how is he doing relative to Harris, who did run at one point? What do those numbers look like?
Yeah, so let's take a look here, right? We've been focusing so much on how Harris was doing better than Biden in the polling, and that's true. If we take a look at the national average, what do we see? We see Donald Trump up by 1. That's a within the margin race, right? That's a close race. But remember, of course, in the national popular vote, Democrats tend to do better there than they've done in the Electoral College, at least when Donald Trump has been running for president. So last time around, when Joe Biden...
That's right. And let me just jump in here real fast so you can get context. If you watch our show on a regular basis, you know that, first of all, number one, we don't take a lot of polls too seriously right now anyway, although it is informative now that they've made this switch, this probably illegal switch that they've made on the top of their ticket, that it's, I think, reasonable to find out what people are thinking. But with regard to national polls, they're bogus for multiple reasons. The most important one is that's not how we elect presidents. We don't elect presidents on national polls or on a national election. We have a state-by-state election. So really the most important polling that we're going to see probably by Saturday or Sunday or Monday of next week are going to be those battleground state-by-state polls of Harris versus Trump, okay? That said, the last time a Republican won the national popular vote was, who can tell me? Who can tell me? Anyone out there? It was 2004, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, when George W. Bush won the presidency. In fact, the time he won it 4 years before that, in 2000, he did not win the national popular vote. In fact, even though we've had 2 terms of a Republican president with George Bush and 1 term of a Republican president with Donald Trump, since 1992, the only time a Republican has won the national popular vote was in 2004. Going back to 1992, 88 was the last time George Bush's dad, George Herbert Walker Bush, won the national popular vote. Then George W. in 2004. And that's it, you guys. That's it. So it doesn't matter. It truly doesn't matter if a Democrat is winning on a national basis. That said, look at this. Trump is still in the lead on a national basis. What it tells you is just how overwhelming the Republican position is as of now. It'll change. It can easily change. The state by state's the most important. The national poll is not as important. But if you're a Democrat right now and you're seeing Trump winning the national poll, you know you're in trouble.
Barely won in the Electoral College. He actually won the national popular vote by 4 points. So at this point, Donald Trump is running 5 points better. 5, that's a 5 of some sort. 5 points better than he was 4 years ago against Joe Biden. So at this particular point, whether you look at the favorable ratings, whether you look at the horse race polling, we see that Donald Trump is doing significantly better than he was doing 4 years ago at this point. Kamala Harris is going to have to do better than this, of course, if she wants to win the popular vote, but more than that, if she wants to win the Electoral College, where she'll likely have to outperform how she's done nationally, because the fact is, if you got to tie it in the national popular vote, that is probably not good enough if you're Kamala Harris and you want to win the election against Donald Trump.
That's right. And that last point that he made there about what Biden did in the national polling in 2020, he won the national popular vote by 4 points. He won the Electoral College vote by that much. In fact, if just about 70,000 or 80,000 votes in 3 key states went in a different direction, he would have lost that election. And some people, based on how we saw the electoral integrity fall apart during the 2020 pandemic election, we would argue that probably that's exactly what did happen. But of course, we can't have any real legitimate recounts because there's no paper ballots. And I don't want to go down that rabbit trail. The point is, Biden barely won, and he was still winning 4 points ahead on the national on the national popular vote. Okay. As if that weren't bad enough, what happens when you dive into these numbers even further? You start pulling, okay, how's Kamala Harris doing with this voting block or that voting block? One message that we've heard from the media over the last several days is how popular she is with young voters. The Zoomers, the Gen Z. Have you seen this whole thing about Brat Summer and that she's really hitting it on TikTok and social media? She's the master of the memes, and the young people love that. Well, first of all, I just want you to know, and this is no insult to those of you who are in this 18 to 29 age group. We love you. We're glad you're part of our audience. You're smart. You enjoy watching alternative news media. And so don't take this the wrong way. But if you're going to lose any voting block out there and you're running for president, it's going to be the 18 to 29-year-olds, because you guys don't show up and vote the way other voting blocks do, the other way other age demographics do. So even if Kamala Harris is doing well with the 18 to 29 vote, that doesn't really translate into electoral success necessarily if you look at elections for the last 40 years in this country. That said, she's not doing well with those voters either.
Larry, can you switch that scene?
Oh, maybe I should share this tab so everybody can see what I'm seeing. I'm really enjoying it, but I bet you'd enjoy it too.
One man knows the answer. CNN senior data reporter Harry. And in this case, I say, the answer. What you've done is you've looked at the numbers since Sunday. What do they say?
Yeah, all this stuff about Brat Summer and all that jazz. So I want to take a look at Trump versus Democratic margin. Just remind folks where we were at the end of the 2020 campaign. Joe Biden won voters under the age of 35 by 21 points. What do we see with Kamala Harris? Well, she's still ahead, but the margin here is significantly less than what we saw with Joe Biden back in 2020. She's up by just 9 points. You may make the argument that was better than Biden was doing before he got out, but compared to that Democratic baseline, where Democrats have historically in presidential elections, at least this century, been carrying that young vote by 20 or more percentage points, she is way down from that. So if this is unique support among young voters, I would like to know what non-unique support is. Is it even worse than this?
Is she doing better than Biden was, though?
She was doing slightly better. Maybe Biden was up by, like 6 on average or 5. This is maybe slightly better, but this is not game-changing stuff, Mr. Berman.
All right, what have we seen in terms of motivation?
Yeah, so, the other thing is we talk about vote choice, right? But let's also talk about motivation, right? Because it's not just who you would support, it's whether or not you come out to the polls. And this, I think, is rather interesting. Do Democrats say they're more motivated to turn out after Biden left the race? Well, we do see a significant portion of Democrats who say yes, 39%. The thing I was interested in was it disproportionately younger voters who said that they were more likely to turn out or more motivated to turn out. And what we see here is it's 42%. Not a big difference between 42 and 39%. So this idea, again, that the vice president has unique potential to dig in and get young voters to turn out, John, it's just not there in the numbers, despite all the internet memes that are going around.
At least not yet. And one of the issues has been, Harry, this trend, which I think you were among the first to point out. Young voters have changed or say they are changing in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah, oftentimes it's difficult to go against the grain. Kamala Harris may be fighting uphill. So I want to look at party identification again. Voters under the age of 35. Go back to 2020. This is the Pew Research study. This is one of the best studies that we have. And look at that. 56% of young voters said that, in fact, they were Democrat. They identified as Democrat or lean Democratic. You look down at 2024, it's 49%. Look at the Republican jump from 39 to 49%. So when we say that Harris is doing worse than Biden, it's not that she's uniquely bad. It's rather she's fighting uphill. She's trying to fight against a wave that is going against the Democrats among young voters. And Harris may be unique in some ways. Maybe she does slightly better than the generic Democrat, but not all that much.
Yeah, what this was shaping up to be a generational shift. The question is, was it just about Biden or was it about his administration? We may find out soon.
We may find out soon, but at this particular point, it doesn't look like Harris is going to be able to fight against the grain too much, Mr.
Harriet, and thank you very much.
It's about, if I may, because listen, I'm not any high-paid CNN analyst or anchor, but I can see what's going on in front of my face. As bad as this economy is, as horrible as inflation is, as disaster it is for anybody to have to buy or refinance their home mortgage, it's that much worse for anyone from the age of 18 to 39, or even worse for 18 to 29. Listen, for people who are over 40, who already have kind of an established career, an established salary, and they've sort of settled into what their monthly budgets are going to be, they can adjust quickly when the economy takes a tank. But if you're just starting out, if you're just getting your career going, if you're dealing with having to save money to buy a house and you see interest rates going from 2.5% to 7.5%, if you see the cost of every single thing that you need to get through the month increase by 20% when your salary did not increase, you're feeling it harder than anyone. That's what it's about. And a lot of those people between the age of 18 and 39, certainly if they're 25 to 39, they have very real memories of what this economy and what our country was like just 3.5 years ago. And now they have a choice to do a do-over. One other thing, this whole idea that Kamala Harris is this great master of the meme. And first of all, I find it rather insulting to younger voters that they're going to cast their lot for president based on who's churning out the best, coolest memes. But if that's the case, is there ever a greater meme president than Donald Trump? You're really going to tell me that Kamala Harris is the master of the presidential memes? Look at Trump. The man is a walking, talking meme, for crying out loud. Every time. Did you see this week he did this YouTube video with the professional golfer where the two of them did an hour-long video to raise money for charities for Wounded Warriors Project, and they tried to beat 50 on a golf course, and he was amazing. And that's the kind of, I mean, more people saw that than are going to see any Kamala Harris ad or Kamala Harris rally this week. And Donald Trump has become a part of the American culture and the cultural lexicon. Did you see the baseball players who, the one guy from the Tampa Bay Rays, he hit a double, and when he got to the second base, he turned to the dugout and went, fight, fight, fight. There was a Philadelphia Phillies player. No, excuse me. God, sorry. You don't want to confuse any other team with the Phillies because Philadelphia fans. Am I right? A St. Louis Cardinal player hit like a 3-run homer, and as it was rounding third, he turned to the dugout and he put his hand over his ear like he got shot in the ear, and he did this. I mean, Donald Trump is a meme, and he has become woven into the American pop culture lexicon. It's going to be a lot for Kamala Harris to fight against that if memes are what these voters are looking for. Frankly, I'm old-fashioned. I think these voters are looking to have a job that pays them well and inflation down to a place where they can actually afford to live a good life in America. And, oh, by the way, walk around a major city without having to constantly look over the shoulder because they're afraid they're about to get sexually assaulted or murdered, or you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, things are not good for Kamala Harris right now. And just by changing the star quarterback on your team, if you still have a terrible playbook and you still have a terrible offensive line and you don't have any receivers, and I don't know how far I can take this analogy, but you know what I'm saying. Just switching the driver of a broken down car is not going to let you win the race. Kamala Harris may be something new and something fresh, and she may not trip over a teleprompter, but the Democratic Party and the Biden-Harris administration have a serious message problem, and Donald Trump right now is still in command of this race. That said, this November is a lot. Let me try that again. This November is about a lot more than just who wins the Oval Office. Now, that's important. Don't get me wrong, but control of the Senate is important. Control of the House, or maybe even Republicans expanding their majority in the House, is important. Also, getting governors elected for the Republican Party is incredibly important. All the way down the ticket, everyone is hoping to secure a victory this November, and whoever is at the top of that ticket, it has an effect on all of those races. And if you think that switching out Joe Biden for Kamala Harris is going to help Democrats who are running for Senate or House or other races, I think you're wrong. Because look at this devastating ad that just got released by the Republican nominee for Senate in Pennsylvania.
Kamala Harris is inspiring and very capable. The more people get to know her, they're going to be particularly impressed by her ability.
The nonpartisan GovTrack has rated you as the most liberal senator.
I am prepared to get rid of the filibuster to pass a Green New Deal. There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
Would you ban offshore drilling?
Yes.
What is the solution for voters in the fossil fuel industry?
Giving the workers an ability to transition. We're not going to treat people who are undocumented cross borders criminals. That's correct.
Raise your hand if you think it should be a civil offense rather than a crime to cross the border without documentation.
Abolish ICE.
Yeah.
Is that a position you agree with?
And we need to probably think about starting from scratch.
Outdated, it is wrong-headed thinking to think that the only way you're going to get communities to be safe is to put more police officers on the street.
Would you support changing the dietary guidelines?
Yes.
The food pyramid. People
yes.
To reduce red meat specifically.
Yes.
People who are convicted in prison, like the Boston Marathon bombers, on death row, people who are convicted of sexual assault, they should be able to vote?
I think we should have that conversation.
We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program.
So for people out there who like their insurance, they don't get to keep it.
Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on.
I am opposed to any policy that would deny any human being public health, period.
The more people get to know her, they're going to be particularly impressed by her ability.
We did it, Joe.
That's absolutely a nuclear bomb. It's devastating. There's no survivors after that. That's Dave McCormick running for Senate for the Republican Party against Bob Casey. And it began and ended with Bob Casey, the Democrat, who likes to call himself a moderate. In fact, didn't he pretend? Does he still pretend to be pro-life? I think he does. I don't know how you keep voting for this party and pretend to be a protector of unborn children. That's Bob Casey endorsing Kamala Harris there at the beginning and the end of that ad. That's that's going to leave a mark. And just replace out McCormick at the end here with every other Republican running for Senate right now across the country. No matter how many rallies they try to throw together, and no matter how they try to sugarcoat who Kamala Harris is and try to make her into an icon instead of an actual politician who has policies and a record, they're going to have trouble. They can't deny the fact that every single one of those clips you just saw are not from when she was vice president. Those are all when she was running for president 4 years ago, a campaign that was so disastrous that she had to pull out and cancel it before the voters actually had a chance to say how much they hated her. And now they're trying to push her on the American people, despite the fact that voters have never actually said, oh yeah, I'm with her, I'm with Kamala. They are so cynically going about this process with the one sort of philosophical perspective that they have, that which is people will vote for anybody but Donald Trump. They hate Trump so much that they're dying to pick anybody. And so let's just throw Kamala out there. Why not? After all, she's a historic figure. She's a black woman. Now, this is exactly what they did with Joe Biden, by the way, in 2020. But at the very least, Joe Biden could pretend that he was a moderate, right? But he governed in a way that was completely antithetical to the way he attempted to be a senator for 50 years. That said, the media is going to do whatever they can. Oh, real fast before I forget it. Did you notice in the ad, there's one policy here that she promoted, and I want to put it up there: defund the police, abolish ICE. But then there was this one. Oh, reduce meat consumption. Hang on. Yeah, no, it wasn't even that one. That wasn't even the one that was amazing. Hold on. Yes.
We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program.
It's so beautiful that Democrats do this, the liberals do this, a mandatory buyback program. We need to have a buyback program for guns. You know, we'll buy your gun back from you, which is kind of funny. You know, think about the words being used there. We want to get rid of guns. We want to get guns off the street. So we'll have a buyback program. Buyback suggests that the original purchase was made from the American citizen who owns the gun, that they purchased it from the government, right? Buyback. Hey, the government's going to buy that gun back. No. If it's really a buyback program, then the store who sold it to you would be buying it back. But they want to use these words buyback to sort of cloud reality and lie. But so we're not going to confiscate guns. We're going to have a buyback program. Oh, well, what if I don't want to sell my gun to you? Oh, no. It's a mandatory buyback program. A mandatory buyback program. George Orwell would not even try to put this past his editor. His editor was like, oh, come on. No one's going to believe that crap. It's not gun confiscation, everybody. It's a mandatory buyback program. Well, what if I don't want to sell it? No. It's mandatory. You have no choice. You must give us your gun. But it's not confiscation. It's a mandatory buyback program. That's who Kamala Harris is. But the media is going overtime. If you watch the show on a regular basis, you know that I told you several weeks ago, if not a couple of months ago, that I predicted this will happen. Now, at the time, to be fair, I thought that Joe Biden was going to resign the presidency. Then Kamala Harris would become the incumbent president, and it would be very challenging to run against the first historic black woman president. Now, little did I know that Joe Biden would be so obstinate and so stubborn and so narcissistic that he would refuse to actually resign the presidency, although that could still happen between now and Election Day. But instead, the historic black woman running for president is still the media narrative that is exploding right now. There was a time, I think it was Peter Hassan, the editor of Free Beacon. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. He took a screenshot of the top 6 stories of the New York Times late yesterday afternoon, and all of them were like beyond glowing of Kamala Harris puff pieces. It's almost like the media doesn't have anything else to cover right now. I mean, maybe it's me, but I would think the fact that the White House and Democrat leadership, including Kamala Harris, have been covering up the truth about Joe Biden's health for the last 3.5 years is a story worth investigating. But the media is not really interested in that. I would think that perhaps the failures of the Secret Service on the assassination attempt of Donald Trump and all of the questions that still demand answers, and what appears to be at the very least, a lack of transparency, if not a full-blown cover-up of the Secret Service's behavior the day of that assassination attempt. I would think, as a young journalist looking to make my name, that I would start pulling threads on that story. But nope, the media doesn't seem very interested in that story either. No. They're spending most of their time promoting Kamala Harris and elevating her up like our new Obama. She's Obama in a dress, which, by the way, based on some of the stories you'll learn about Barack Obama, that might not be a really big breaking story. I mean, for all we know, Obama in a dress was actually Obama in a dress. That said, look at this latest lie. Axios this morning put out an article. I kid you not. Here's the tweet that came with it. The Trump campaign and Republicans have tagged Harris repeatedly with the border czar title, which she never actually had. So you click on this article, and there it is. In the past few days, the Trump campaign and Republicans have tagged Harris repeatedly with the border czar title, which she never actually had. The headline here is Harris Border Confusion Haunts Her New Campaign. It's written by Steph Kite over there at Axios. Axios is very well respected inside the Beltway. Oh, they're so smart, those Axios people. But what's interesting is Axios put out this article back in March of 2021, and the headline is Biden puts Harris in charge of border crisis. So explain to me how Axios in March of 21 has a headline that says Biden puts Harris in charge of border crisis, and then today they have an article that says Harris border confusion haunts her, and in the article it says that Republicans have tagged Harris with the border czar title, which she never had. We should really talk to this writer today, Steph Kite, and remind her that back in March of 2021, her own publication had this headline that proves that Biden made Harris the border czar. Now, this article was written by... This article was also written by Steph Kite. No. I kid you not. Let me zoom in. The byline on the March of 2021 article at Axios detailing how Joe Biden just made Kamala Harris the border czar is written by Steph Kite. And today's article accusing Republicans of lying about whether Kamala Harris was the border czar or not is written by Steph Kite. That's what the media is doing right now. I mean, you can't make it up. I wish I could make it up. In fact, here's the video of Joe Biden in March tapping. I mean, why do we even need to go through this escapade? Everybody knows Kamala Harris was in charge of the border. Remember when she went to Guatemala and said, do not come, do not come. Even though when she was running for president, she said it's outrageous that these poor, desperate people aren't being welcomed into our country. She sat down with Lester Holt, and Lester Holt said, so you're going to go to the border? And she said, well, I've been to the border. Or no, she says, yeah, we'll go to the border eventually. And he said, well, you are in charge of border policy. And she goes, yeah. But, I haven't been to Europe either. Remember that? Why do we even have to do this? Why do I have to go through this process to prove that she's the border czar when everybody knows she's the border czar? I'll tell you why. Because the media lies to you. And they're lying right now. And they're trying to rewrite history. And you should turn them off and stop watching them. Let me watch them for you so I can tell you how bad they are. And so you can see through their lies. Here it is, Joe Biden, March 2021.
I've asked her, the VP today, because she's the most qualified person to do it, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle.
By the way, she's the most qualified person to do this. Kamala Harris, the 4-year senator from California and the former attorney general of California, who never dealt with anything outside the borders of this country, let alone the southern border of this country. Kamala Harris is the most qualified person to go to Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and Mexico to figure out why people are coming here illegally. Just a little walk down memory lane about how awful this White House was from beginning to end, not just recently. I do love the touch of the face masks, by the way.
that help. We're going to need help in stemming the movement of so many folks stemming the migration to our southern border.
Yeah, and she did a hell of a job, didn't she? She did great. But they're acting like it never happened. And unless we're here to remind you that it happened, they will get away with these lies. Watch this from CNN.
This is the kind of thing that is playing out all over conservative media. I just want to do a little bit of record correcting. There's not record crime right now. Number one, Harris was put in charge, as you said earlier, of combating the roots of immigration. She was not and is not the border czar. And the Biden administration did task Vice President Kamala Harris with the issue of migrant crossings, naming her the so-called border czar.
I've asked her, the VP, today, because she's the most qualified person to do it, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle and the countries that help. We're going to need help in stemming the movement of so many folks stemming the migration to our southern border.
We've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I mean, I don't understand the point that you're making.
Yeah. The point is, she is the border czar. She's been the border czar. The fact that they're desperately trying to lie about it right now proves one very important thing. They are terrified of this issue. And they're already trying to rewrite history, lie to your face, and distance themselves from what is clearly one of the most vulnerable, if not the most vulnerable aspect of Kamala Harris as the Democrat nominee for president. You think of one symbolic disaster of the Biden administration and the Biden presidency of the last 3.5 years, and nothing tells the story about how hapless and weak and incompetent they are, not to mention how corrupt and criminal they are, than the border. The border is it. Whether it's the root cause of immigration or illegal immigration, or it's just the fundamentals of securing the border, nothing tells you, or by the way, the resulting violent crime in our streets right now as a result of the unvetted, unmitigated disaster of border security and people coming in here without knowing who the hell they are. Nothing exemplifies it as much as this border. And she was in charge. She was put in charge. It's her disaster. And that's why they're trying to lie to you. That's why they're trying to rewrite history. And Dana Bash, I'm sorry, should be ashamed of herself.
The kind of thing that is playing out all over conservative media. I just want to do a little bit of record correcting. There's not record crime right now. Number one.
I do love it when they fact check, by the way. I just want to do some record correcting. Where was Dana Bash record correcting when Joe Biden at that debate to her face said, no member of the military has died on my watch? But I'm glad that Dana Bash is Johnny on the spot now. And what was this last one, Dana?
Harris was put in charge, as you said earlier, of combating the roots of immigration. She was not and is not the border czar.
There you go. She is not and was not the border czar. Well, listen, we're glad that you're here because we will cut through this crap and we'll deliver the truth to you. Don't trust cable news from this point forward. Just watch it if you want entertainment, honestly. Democrats are falling in line like the good little soldiers they are to support their brand new fearless leader. And they've immediately pivoted from Joe Biden being the greatest president in the history of America. And you must reelect him because he's so consequential and so beneficial. They've pivoted to Kamala Harris is the greatest, most qualified woman ever even to think about running for president. And we're fortunate to live in the same time and same space as her in this country. Don't believe me? I understand. Maybe you'll believe Maxine Waters.
Knows how it all works now. She's worked at the White House. She's the vice president of the United States, and she's smarter than Trump. And so If they come after her,
yeah,
she's going to get them.
You know her. I mean, she was the Attorney General Office of California
that's
Senator.
right.
Talk about who she is as a person. I mean, I know her a little. She's a lovely person. What do we need to know about her?
Well, I think what you need to know is she was a determined person. She had a good career because she concentrated and worked at having a good career.
We're gonna start this again from this answer. I do love the hard-hitting Joy Reid question here to Maxine Waters. Tell us about what she's like as a person. But as you hear Maxine Waters answer that question, and we're going to start it again right at the beginning of her answer, I want you to bear in mind that at the age of 29 years old, she had an extramarital affair with a married man, Willie Brown, who was the most powerful Democrat in California. And as a result of the sexual dalliance that she was all too willing to participate in, he gave her, let's say, a leg up. Wait, that conjures a physical image. Although I'm sure a leg up was involved in one of the, anyway, he gave her many advantages. He gave her many political appointed positions. Don't go there. That she otherwise would not have had were she not delivering a little extracurricular benefit for Willie Brown on the side. And this is not news. This is not a secret. In fact, Californians like to refer to these things as open secrets. And open secrets, of course, are not secrets at all. So Kamala Harris entered into an extramarital sexual affair with a powerful man 30 years older than her. And suddenly, before you know it, she has a burgeoning political career in California. Knowing that fact, listen again to how Maxine Waters answers this question and the words she decides to use to describe Kamala Harris's brilliant political career.
I mean, I know her a little. She's a lovely person. What do we need to know about her?
Well, I think what you need to know is she was a determined person. She had a good career because she concentrated and worked at having a good career. And she moved right up the ladder into the Senate and into the vice presidency. Yeah. Well, it was all because she is strong and she believed in herself. And she came from strong parents. And so it never dawned on her that she would fail.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
It was that kind of strength and that kind of courage and that kind of belief in self that I think defines her. Yeah. You know, and she did all the right things for the most part in terms of how you climb up the ladder. Yeah. I don't care what they say. Yeah. She trained well, she went to school, she did well, all of those things that she was taught to do. And so I think she'd be seen and understood as a woman who was always on a mission. Yeah. She was accomplished. She succeeded.
She climbed the ladder the right way and she was always on a mission. Okay, Maxine. Those were all really, really vivid descriptions of her ascent to the level that she's at now. And by the way, for people out there who believe that it's untoward or inappropriate and wrong for people to bring up this open secret, this sexual dalliance that allowed her to have doors open for her earlier in her career, let me just say this. I've just endured 8 years of lies about Donald Trump having an affair with Stormy Daniels, the porn star. Something that, by the way, Stormy Daniels swore in an affidavit that never happened until more money was involved in her saying that it did happen. But there's still no actual evidence that a sexual affair between Stormy Daniels and Donald Trump ever took place. It's kind of a he said, she said situation. But that was headline news. That was breaking lead story on cable news networks for years, right up until this last year with the court case against him, where the only reason they tried him and convicted him was so that they could drag the story back out again. Hush money to a porn star, hush money to a porn star, hush money. I'm sorry, if that's a legitimate story, which has less evidence and fact-based foundation to support it, then certainly the accurate, truthful story about Kamala Harris is just as relevant. Just saying. All right, let's move from Maxine Waters to our favorite Native American politician, Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren had plenty to say in support of her colleague Kamala.
But we have to remember, Vice President Harris is one of the most qualified people to run in decades. Look, she was a prosecutor, very effective.
Yeah, she was effective prosecutor at throwing people in jail for having a half pocket full of weed. But set that aside. I'm sorry, the most experienced, is that what she said? I'm sorry, I just want to get this right.
Remember, Vice President Harris is one of the most qualified people to run in decades.
All right, most qualified people to run in decades. Let's break down the last few candidates. We'll set Donald Trump aside, although I would argue that Donald Trump is more qualified to be president of the United States than Kamala Harris. You know how? Because he's already been president of the United States. Nothing compares to having that kind of experience. So he's already been president. He's clearly more qualified than Kamala Harris. All right, set him aside for a moment. Joe Biden, say what you will about him. He was vice president for 8 years. He was a senator for, 120 years. He was pretty qualified. Before that, the election was Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State for 4 years. She was a senator for 6 or 8 years, I think, and First Lady, which isn't a official position, but she certainly understood how a White House operated. And she held that position for 8 years. All right. Before that, it was Barack Obama. And I'll grant you that Kamala Harris is actually more qualified than Barack Obama. But he went on to win. So now what are you going to do? Mitt Romney was a governor of Massachusetts, which is an executive level position, very different than being a senator like Kamala Harris was. And before that, he was a self-made man. He inherited a lot of millions of dollars, but he ran major corporations, which is, frankly, I think more taxing and more legitimate than being a senator. Before that, it was John McCain. He was a senator for decades in the United States Senate and had a military career, something Kamala Harris hasn't even come close to. Should we keep going on? Why not? Let's keep going on. John Kerry, like him or not, he had a lot more years in the Senate than Kamala Harris ever did. I guess he didn't have the executive experience that Kamala had as vice president, so let's call that a wash. But George W. Bush was an incumbent president, and he had been a governor in Texas for many years before that, 2 terms, if I remember right. He clearly was pretty qualified, more qualified than Kamala Harris. Al Gore, well, he was vice president for 8 years, and before that was a senator, way more qualified than Kamala Harris. Should we keep going on? 96 was Bob Dole. He was the senator for 40 years, including being the majority leader in the Senate. Bill Clinton had been a governor for 4 terms and was president of the United States. George Herbert Walker Bush in 1992 was the CIA director. He was the vice president for 8 years, and he was the incumbent president. What are we talking about here? Who exactly? So when Elizabeth Warren says, I'm so proud of myself for doing that off the top of my head. Thank you. When Elizabeth Warren says,
Vice President Harris is one of the most qualified people to run in decades.
I think what she's saying is she's more qualified than Barack Obama was. Barack Obama is the only one who fits that description. And again, I point out, Barack Obama won the presidency despite his lack of experience. All right, let's move on to the really critical question. And I got to hand it to Caitlin Collins on CNN for asking it. Well, she's so great. You worked with her. You've seen her operate. She's been vice president for 3.5 years. What's her greatest accomplishment? Seems like a slow pitch across the plate, right? This should be something pretty easy to answer. And watch the only thing Elizabeth Warren could come up with.
What do you think has been her biggest accomplishment since she's been vice president?
Oh, I have to say, since the Dobbs opinion, the way that she has rallied women and friends of women, also called men, around this country on the issue of abortion and just taken it home. First vice president in history to visit an abortion clinic. Go get them. You know, she's someone who talks openly about things that were kind of challenging for some people to talk about, but also to talk about it with...
President Biden didn't even mention the word abortion in his State of the Union.
But Vice President Harris has, and she's talked about it both with compassion, but also with a sense of what is right. How can we be a country that half of America lost rights because of an extremist Supreme Court put in place by Donald Trump.
So her number one accomplishment as vice president was to talk about abortion and go to a Planned Parenthood abortion mill. That's, well, I guess that's one person's perspective on an accomplishment. It certainly tells you everything you need to know about what they plan to lead with in this campaign. It's going to be very much about the killing of unborn babies, which I guess works in some states and with some voters. But what a ghoulish way to acquire political power, and what a ghoulish epitaph if you're vice president of the United States and the best thing one of your partners, one of your colleagues says about you when pressed about your greatest accomplishment is to talk about killing babies. Boy, we have a clear choice ahead of us, don't we? Yesterday, the Senate leader, Chuck Schumer, finally brought himself to endorse Kamala Harris. And boy, it was an exciting moment there in the press briefing room.
So now that the process is played out from the...
By the way, hold on. I'm sorry. I got to jump in here. What process played out exactly? This whole thing was over in 24 hours. The entire thing happened behind the scenes with Kamala Harris or other people on her behalf strong-arming state delegations saying, you better get behind Kamala or else. The process has played out, everybody. They knocked Joe out on Sunday, and by Monday night, it was Kamala. There's the process for you. Could you describe exactly what that process is, sir? Pay no attention to that. All right, I'm sorry. It just struck me. I forgot that he said that at the beginning of this video.
So now that the process is played out from the grassroots bottom up, we are here today to throw our support behind Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm clapping. You don't have to.
Please clap. Why is he talking like he's at some sort of political rally with a bunch of voters there? Let's hear it. This is a press briefing. The members of the media are there. I mean, I'm sure in their hearts they're applauding and cheering because we know who they are. But they're not really supposed to clap at things like that. They still have the veneer and pretense of being impartial and not being on anybody's side. But Schumer kept begging them for applause. It's creepy.
Vice President Harris will beat Donald Trump and become the next president of the United States of America. Applause. Hakeem.
Wow. That's just sad. It's sad, but obviously this had to happen. They were all given their marching orders. Go out there and throw your support to Kamala Harris. And I mean, it seems so forced. And it seems like they're convincing you of something that they're not even sure about. And then I did love this moment. Chuck Schumer was asked one very specific question about his role in removing Joe Biden from contention, from the ticket. Because remember, those stories came out that Chuck Schumer had went and visited him in Delaware and convinced him to get off the ticket. Watch Schumer's answer to this basic question. Did you tell Joe Biden to get off the ticket?
Ever personally ask him not to run for re-election?
Look, what I would say is that the president has done an amazing, amazing job as president, one of the best we've ever had, and he put his country first and made the right decision.
Wow, that sure is a way of answering the question without answering it, but definitely answering it. Did you personally ask Joe Biden to get off the ticket? How hard is it to say yes or no? If he didn't, you would think he would say, no, I didn't. Next question. But he didn't say that. He didn't even come close to saying that. Let me just say this. He put the country first and he made the right decision. Oh, so you did tell him to get off the ticket. I point this out to you only so that you can see these lies as they're happening before your eyes. I'm sure you do already. You've got a keen eye for it. But they know that you know that they're lying. Look at the smile on his face. Look at the duplicitous nature of how they operate when they lie to you. It's more than a politician lying, because Lord knows we know politicians lie. They lie to you, and you know they're lying, and they know you know they're lying, and they keep on lying, and they keep on lying to you with a smile on their face, expecting you to accept the lies. And how many lies do we have to take from these people over the years before we finally say enough is enough? All right, we have some absolutely stunning yet kind of disturbing police body cam video that's now been released. This is the aftermath of the assassination attempt. This is on the roof right after the attempted assassin was neutralized by Secret Service snipers. So there's blood, his dead corpse is there, but this is critically important to watch and to listen from this body cam. And again, I want to warn you, it's a little bit graphic and a little bit harrowing, because you're going to see grown men, law enforcement officers, a Secret Service agent, on a dangerously sloped roof. If you have trouble with that, I advise you to tune away now, because that can be harrowing, I know. Take a look at this.
So we don't know. So this is the guy that
yes, but they sent yes, Beaver County sniper team and sent the pictures out. This is him.
Okay. Rifle right there, obviously. Got it. So.
All right, real fast, and I promise I will let it run, but did you catch that? This is the guy who the county law enforcement took pictures of and sent it in. That's important. This is evidence from this body cam that the local law enforcement people who were there to support the Secret Service efforts at the time identified the suspect ahead of time, saw him as suspicious, took pictures of him, and sent those pictures to the Secret Service. And as you watch the Secret Service agent operate here, you will see that he not only acknowledges that, but he acknowledges that they had these pictures. Really important. Watch.
Right in the back. Is he on that bike? We don't know. We don't know. So I don't know. Treating that as suspicious device.
Oh, 1 second. I believe the sniper that seen these and sent the pictures is right inside this building. Michelle, is Greg in there? All right, so if you go to that window that's open and yell for Greg, that's the sniper that sent the original pictures and seen him come from the bike and set the book back down and then lost sight of him.
Okay.
He's the one that sent the pictures out. I don't know if you got the same ones I did.
I think I did, yeah. He's like got his glasses on and he's
So we had the picture of that.
I got that.
Okay, and then this is his bike with the stuff. And our sniper seen him walking away from that, I believe.
Okay.
But he would be right inside that window. He's the one that physically seen this, sent the pictures, and called it out.
Okay, so and we have somebody detained, correct?
That I don't know.
People detained on this side. Right. Our guy that was just up here told me that there was a guy detained who's the owner of the bike. And I said, no, that's the owner of the bike. Yeah, basically, when I got
We've been up here, so we wouldn't know that information.
We just hauled ass. We got everywhere.
Got it.
We hopped up.
No, yeah. Is that all your stuff? Yeah. Yeah. So someone came up looking to treat him.
Coffee. Gas is off to the building, just so you know.
Yeah, they do. I talked to the guy. Those people detained were filming. Maybe they were involved. Maybe they weren't. Other than that, I haven't heard anything. I think the guys that saw them filming were like, oh, they were filming us, and then filming the guy up on the roof, and then filming us, and then when the shots started firing, they tried to run away. Isn't that what everybody would do that has a phone? You know, I'm not saying they weren't involved, but you know what I mean? Like that.
It's up in the air right now, right?
Right. So I got no problem detaining them. Again, I'm just trying to detain those guys, find out what they know, who they are, whatever. I'm trying to get clear information to relay back to DC. We have one shooter deceased. I think we have 3 victims in the crowd. You guys hearing that too?
That I'm not sure.
So I heard 1 deceased, 2 white fighter.
I know 2 helicopters take off.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't know how many victims.
3 are deceased.
We have access to a drone.
Any LE?
I will try to confirm.
in the van. Did he survive? Pop it.
All right. Now, a couple of things here, and I'm sorry, I'm get a little woozy with that whole sloped roof thing. I get motion sickness. I get, you almost feel like you're having the sensation of being on that sloped roof, and we know how dangerous that is. Exactly. Thank you, Connie. They should have had safety harnesses. Where's OSHA when you need it? I don't know how they got away with that. All right. Now, a couple of observations made by Colin Rugg on his X account here. It seems like they're confirming that the sniper team that took the picture was in this room circled here off of the roof. The photo on the left was taken by someone in that room. Look at the proximity there, which raises some questions, right? I mean, how exactly were they able to see all of this go down and not intervene from such a close proximity in that room, unless at that very moment they decided to take their eyes off that guy, or the ones who observed him in that room are the ones who left that position to go and try to get him off of the roof, thus leaving no one there to watch him to see what he was doing, right? It's all, well, at the very least, disconcerting, if not maddening, if not, let's call it suspicious. In fact, many of the suspicions about what went on July 13th came out today, just about an hour ago. Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan chairman, questioning Christopher Wray, who's conducting or overseeing, I should say, the investigation.
Director, let me go back to where Mr. Bishop was. Tell me about the drone. You act like you wanted to fill us in on that. Fill us in.
So we have recovered a drone that the shooter appears to have used. It's being exploited and analyzed by the FBI lab. The drone was recovered in his vehicle. So at the time of the shooting, the drone was in his vehicle with the controller. In addition, our investigation has uncovered.
Do you know what time of day he flew it, and if he flew it on the day of the shot?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So in addition, it appears that around 3:50 p.m., 4 o'clock in that window on the day of the shooting, that the shooter was flying the drone around the area
2 hours.
for about 11 minutes. I want to be clear, but when I say the area, not over the stage and that part of the area itself, but I would say about 200 yards, give or take, away from that. We think, but we do not know. So again, this is one of these things that's qualified because of our ongoing review, that he was live streaming, viewing the footage from that, again, about 11 minutes in around the 3:50, 4 o'clock p.m. range.
2 hours before, he's flying a drone in the vicinity of the route.
About 200 yards away. Yes.
200 yards. Okay, that's important information. What about the bombs that we've heard about in the shooter's car?
So again, the FBI lab is exploiting those explosive devices. Yep. We've recovered 3 devices, 2 in his vehicle and 1 back in his residence.
Are these what you would call, your experts would call, sophisticated operations, or this? I don't know. That's what I've been told by people who have some understanding of this area.
Yeah, I think it's we've seen more sophisticated and less. I would say these are relatively, again, keyword relatively, crude devices themselves, but they did have the ability to be detonated remotely. And so to that point, in addition to the 2 devices that we recovered out of his vehicle, there were receivers for those 2 explosive devices with the devices. And then on the shooter himself, when he was killed by law enforcement, he had a transmitter with him. Now, I do want to add one important point here, is at the moment, it looks to us, again, ongoing review, and I can't say that too many times. At a moment, it looks like, because of the on-off position on the receivers, that if he had tried to detonate those devices from the roof, it would not have worked. But that doesn't mean the explosives weren't dangerous.
And I'm sure we're going to get into all these subjects a little bit later as well. Tell us what you can about the encrypted platforms we've heard about.
So one of the things that we're drilling into hard with the shooter in an effort to try to learn more about his state of mind, his motive, his ideology, his context, everything else, is to look at all of his devices, any social media accounts he had, et cetera. And one of the things we've learned in finally getting into his phone, which was also a significant technical challenge from an encryption perspective, but in addition, once we got on the phone, it turned out he was using some encrypted messaging application.
And again, the same question relative to the bombs. Was this pretty sophisticated, or is this is the kind of the norm you see with folks like, similar situation? How would you describe
on this subject, I would say this has unfortunately now become very commonplace, and it's a real challenge for not just the FBI, but state and local law enforcement all over the country.
Tell me exactly the scope of, does the scope of your investigation include what I call that critical 5 minutes from when the 6:09, when this is based, I think, on information you've given to Congress, 6:09 when the shooter's identified on the roof, and 6:14 when President Trump is ultimately escorted off, and all that happens, the shots that take place in between there. Do you have access to the communications that were going on at the time in that critical 5 minutes?
So our investigation, when you say scope, our investigation includes that time frame, although focused again on the shooter himself. And
now, as involved in that, he's obviously involved in that time frame.
Correct. And as part of that, as part of our focus, our investigation of the shooter and the attack, of course, we are interviewing law enforcement from the scene, because those are some of the most significant witnesses, and we're obviously getting access to their materials and that kind of thing. And the Secret Service has been fully cooperative.
You have access to the communications that exist there.
That exact question, as I sit here at the moment, I don't know the exact answer to that question, but I know that Secret Service has been cooperative with us.
The Congress would like access to those communications as well. I mean, not just that 5 minutes, although I think that's the critical time frame. There's lots of communications we'd love to have access as well.
Yeah, good luck with that, Chairman Jordan. A little bit more from Ray here and some other revelations that he revealed, and then we'll sum it up.
Great, thank you, Mr.
How many separate times was the shooter on the premises?
So again, with the caveat that we're continuing to do work on it, we believe that the first time he traveled to the grounds was, I think, a week before. And he spent roughly 20 minutes there. Then he went to the grounds again on the morning of the event, it appears, for about 70 minutes, I think. But again, I qualify that. I'd have to go back and look to be sure of that part. And then he came back in the afternoon. So that would be, I guess, a third time for good. But that included things like this drone activity we just talked about.
All right. Well, we're going to continue to monitor this hearing. If you want to get updated on it, please check in on a regular basis at the town hall sites and on our town hall social media pages. I'll just say this. This is my problem. I've reached the point now. I don't trust them. I don't trust this guy, certainly, Christopher Wray. What else has he lied about? We know the lies that he's told. Why is he even still in his job? Why are we supposed to take him seriously on something this critical and this important? There should have been immediately an independent investigation called on this. I mean, immediately. I'm sorry. They have made Donald Trump such a polarizing figure. And when I say they, I mean this government, the Biden administration, his political appointees, the people who serve at the pleasure of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They have identified Donald Trump as an existential threat to this country. They have thrown everything they can at him. They've said that he has to be stopped at all costs. And then when there is an assassination attempt that appears to show that it happened or it occurred or was allowed to happen because of either gross negligence, incompetence, or something more sinister within the very agencies that are designed to protect Donald Trump and any other elected official or candidate, then that should immediately trigger an independent external investigation. This man, Christopher Wray, going all the way back to the Russian collusion hoax and the Mueller investigation and the lies and the FBI raid in Mar-a-Lago and the investigation of men who go to traditional Latin mass and the arrests of people who pray in front of abortion clinics and the investigation into parents who go to school board meetings as domestic terrorists. He's lost the trust of the American people. And by extension, sadly, hate to say it, the FBI has also lost that trust. So it's great that he's there. Great that we're getting answers to questions. It would be even better if we could trust him. Any of them. That is it for today. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next time. Same time, same place. I'm Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry.